was a 25-year-old first-year surgery resident. Just walking out of the operating room, just putting somebody back together. It's kind of cool stuff. You know, maybe just a little smug. And then I got the phone call. Dr. Peters? Yes. My name is Dr. Wilson. I'm at the Auburn emergency room. Your father is dead. I go, dead? He's only 54 years old. I know he's hypertensive and he's on a lot of medications and he's under a lot of stress, and the only cooking utensil that he ever used was a cast iron skillet, and he could never control his weight. But now he is dead. Changed my professional life and my personal life. And the same experience will happen to 300,000 Americans this year from weight-related diseases, heart disease, cancers, diabetes, all of these kinds of things that are related to obesity. That's like 822 people dying every day. That's like a couple of jumbo jets crashing every day. Do you think that might kind of get our attention somehow? And so what's driving this epidemic? And it's a worldwide epidemic. It's more people per capita in Mexico are dying from obesity now than in the United States. This is going around the world. What is it? What is it all about? Well, I'll give you a couple options. So first of all, we can take a 14th century myth. Obviously, it's the cardinal sins, like sloth and gluttony. It's pay your money and get forgiven. Maybe that's the solution, you see. And sadly, this myth permeates our world today in society and even in the medical community. If you could hear the stories my patients tell me about coming back from a provider who told them to just buck up, just eat less and exercise more. Look at me, it works for me. How come that doesn't work for you? This inference that it is sloth and gluttony permeates. That 14th century myth we've carried in to the 21st century. What does 21st century science look like? What we find is that our environment has radically changed. And our biology is basically the same as it's always been. And so we begin to see that there's something going on here. Think about the deer hunter-gatherers. All they did was spend time trying to find food. A lot of physical activity went in. That's the biology that we're starting with right here, is to look for food. And then we got to the agricultural revolution, and now we could actually store some grain. And that was kind of cool. Now we had some spare time, and we could come up with arts and religion and look at the stars and do all kinds of amazing things. And then finally, after thousands and thousands of years, we hit this industrial revolution. The environment is massively changed. Now, I know that it looks kind of normal to you. Can I just see a show of hands? How many of you carried buckets of water out of the creek this morning? No, I'm sorry. Chopped wood, I hope. You didn't grind oats? No. You just went to a vending machine or something, you see. So obviously, the world is very, very different, the environment, in just 300 short years. So we have thousands of years of physical activity, and suddenly we have to do nothing. And in this industrial revolution, there's something about that has actually changed about our foods. And, it's all prepared. It's already there. People were wondering how many calories it takes to go through a drive-through. That's an important question, wouldn't you say? How many calories are you going to burn? Well, before we do that one, how would we all agree that it would be very simple to pick up 2,000 calories of food? Are you okay with that? 2,000? I think that would be pretty average, 2,000. Now, I looked this up, and 2,000 calories would be like 20 ears of corn. So think about it. If we were back in that agricultural era where we had to raise 20 ears of corn. So, we cut the row, and then we plant the seeds, and then we rake it, and we tamp it, and we water it. My dad taught me all this stuff. And then, the plant actually grows, and now the ear of corn is there. And so we pick it, and we have to husk it, and we dry it. Then we take the corn, and we grind it, and then we chop the wood, and we put the cornbread in the oven, and we finally get cornbread that we can eat. I mean, I'm amazed that they even made it. It seems like they burned more calories than what they got. But 2,000 calories we're going to get through this one trip through the drive-thru. Now, this is how it kind of goes. You come around in the corner like this. I saw it here at Starbucks here this morning. You just kind of pull in like this, and you push this little button, and your window goes down. And that's kind of cool, you burn some calories, I'm sure. And so then you go, not like a double fry and a milkshake and the whatever. And would you just, make that gigantic or whatever that is? That's double size or triple size or jumbo size or something. And whatever it is, we get our order in. Now we do have to push the button again. And nowadays, you really don't have to put the clutch in. You just put your foot on the pedal and move on around. And now this is kind of where the heavy lifting starts now. Because if you're a woman, you have to reach down and pick up your purse, to get your money out. And if you're a man, you have to reach back and get your billfold out. Now, I'm told that we're going to be able to skip that step pretty soon, because if you have a fast track, it'll just deduct the cost of the food from your little, your little pad there. So then you won't have to do that. So that'll save a few calories. But anyway, we're still on this research. So now we not only push the button, but we got to reach out our arm, And this is pretty gigantic. And so how many calories do you think we actually burn? We're going to get 2,000. How many do you think? 50 calories, 100 calories? 10. 7 calories. 7 calories. 7 calories for 2,000 calories of food. When in the history of humankind have we ever seen that? And so suddenly we begin to buy foods very differently. And as you can see from this graph, the money that Americans spend, now this is just in 30 short years. So from 1982 to 2012, you can see what has gigantically changed is how much of our money is spent on processed, sugary foods and drink. I mean, the real foods, like meats and fruits and vegetables and things like that, we don't buy much of that anymore. And in this whole thing, it brings us back to, okay, what is the biology that's going on here? What is the basic biology that has not changed, that then's brought into an environment which has radically changed? So this is kind of how it works. We eat food. It goes down into our stomach. The stomach digests it, and then we have this beautiful little system. There's insulin. This insulin is made by the pancreas, and it directs the calories into muscle for muscle activity. Remember the hunter-gatherer and the agricultural guy that was using his hoe? This is for muscle activity. Now, if we get kind of lucky and we have a few more calories, then that insulin will direct those calories into the liver. And there, it'll be stored so that we won't have to wake up hungry because it's right there. And if we're really lucky and we have even more calories, those calories are now going to be directed to form fat cells. Now, what's so beautiful about this system is that the fat cells, as they accumulate, send a message back to the brain that you no longer are hungry, that you no longer have to eat more. And by the way, you feel so good that you're going to work until the sun sets. It's a wonderful sort of thing. So as the fat cells decrease, then you get more hungry, then you eat more. It's a system that just works in the usual old-time environment that we no longer have. Are you beginning to get the picture, what science is telling us about obesity? Now, in the midst of this, during these 30 years and doing these 300 years, suddenly we have plenty of food. There's 88,000 different processed foods that we have available to us in America. I mean, all these little packages and stuff. You know, kids probably don't even know that cheese came from a cow, or that bread came from grain, or they don't know these things because it all comes in little packages. Now, get this. 82% of those processed food have added sugar. Do you think that happened by accident? I'll tell you why it's there. We just indulge in our children, in our, everybody. I mean, even from the little guys that are just weaned from their mother's breast. Instead of going to food, just normal foods, or to water even, they're given apple juice. Apple juice has more sugar in it, actually, even than a soda does. And they're just bombarded with all these sweet things. And sugar is indeed addictive. All of a sudden, this whole beautiful system begins to get ragged here, because leptin, that was supposed to come from the fat cells and tell us not to eat more, now says, I am starving. I am hungry. Oh, and by the way, I'm so tired. I definitely don't want to go out and work in the garden, or I guess we don't have gardens, so I'm not going to go to the gym. That message is totally, totally disrupted. And it says just the opposite. It says, eat more. Do you think we might have a problem with that sort of scenario? And in my journeys through the scientific community on the area of obesity, I met this gentleman, Serge Amid. Pretty cool guy. But he has a rat model that is quite interesting. This little rat lives in a cage and gets intravenous cocaine if it pushes a button. Pretty happy little rat, probably. So he was curious about the sugar. Remember, 82% of all foods have added sugar. He knew that it's more than likely addicting. So he was kind of wondering what would happen if you had a cocaine-addicted rat and you just offered it some sugar. So now the little rat has two buttons. He can either push the cocaine button or he can push the sugar button. In 72 hours, all the little rats have switched to sugar and sweet. Amazing, isn't it? Science tells us that this is addicting. So you begin to see that obesity is in an environment that has radically, cataclysmically changed in 300 short years. And our biology continues to be that same, where we want. Food is how we survive. So let's think about, we're going to make a change. Before we make a change, we better understand what's not going to change. Do you think that the stock market would stand still, or the investors would stand still, if a food company decided to make healthy food and the market share began to drift off? Do you think corporate America is going to make that change? I don't think so. Now, you would think that with two jumbo jets crashing every day, it would kind of maybe get our government's attention. Like, whoa, something's really wrong here. Do you think the government is going to tell you what you have to eat? I don't think so. I mean, first of all, they can't agree on anything. So it's very unlikely that this would fly very much, you see. And we already know that we're not going to start walking to work when we have freeways and we live 70 miles from where we work. The transportation system isn't going to radically change. Now, we're hoping that there'll be some adjustments that we can make in our urban areas. And the other thing is our biology is not going to change. So what are we going to do? What can we now do to make a difference? And we can. I know we can. Humanity over and over again has overcome immense obstacles. We have a problem with obesity around the world. We have to conquer this, and we can. So what's going to change? Well, first of all, we all ought to get together and get rid of this 14th century myth. You know, that would be a good starting point. Let's kind of get into the 21st century, if that's okay. You know, kind of leave that old thing behind. Now, if you happen to be a thin biology, you're kind of lucky to be here because you're in the minority, you know? I mean, you can't store fat. You use calories inefficiently. I mean, you're not going to make it, you know. So just kind of, you know that you're definitely on the edge here a little bit. Now, there's a warning, and that is that even if you're thin, have a thin biology, and you use these processed foods, you can override that biology. And this moment in this room, those of you that are thin, 30% of you are on the way to diabetes. The fastest growing form of diabetes right now is in thin people. So you got to kind of watch out here. You just can't just strut around and say, well, I can eat anything. It's not true. So if you're thin, here's what you can do. Avoid this kind of excess sugars and processed foods. When you go to a grocery store, only shop around the periphery of the store. That's where grocery stores have real food. You know, that's where you can get eggs, and you can get meat, and you can get vegetables, and you can get fruit. Never, ever go in the central part. You know, that's a scary place, you see. So just don't go there, because we can change America if the thin people will stop eating this junky stuff, you see. If you don't buy it, they won't make it, you see. And you're biologically not drawn to this. You can make that choice. You're the few people that can make that choice. For goodness sakes, make the choice. And then be sure and make some time where you can actually use your muscles. I mean, you know, nobody, can you imagine having a treadmill in the caveman days, you know? I mean, you know, everybody just worked. You didn't have to make work. I was at a fancy hotel the other day, and I thought it was kind of a cool thing. They had taken all their exercise was manual work, you know, like you would flail, you know, like you're flailing grains, or you'd be making ropes go up and down. Of course, you had some good music, you know, and they were calling out what you should do and everything, to go, hey, wow, we're getting back to work here. You know, we have to fake it, but we can do it. So be sure and get some exercise. Exercise is critical. Most importantly, support your friends and family members that have the heavy biology. Now, if you have a heavy biology, just so you know, you're in the majority. You are the survivors. You are the ones that can store fat. You are the ones that use calories efficiently. And you may be the reason why us thin people are actually here, because it has persisted through thousands and thousands of years of turmoil, and the heavy biology is what has brought us here. With all of that aside, for you, the heavy biology people, this is like walking through a minefield. Food everywhere. And you have to realize you did not create this environment. You did not choose this biology. It is not your fault. But guess what? It is your responsibility. So if you know that you have a heavy biology, and you know the story about Dr. Amy's little rat, and you know that this is a true addiction, we're going to have to do something very different. We're going to have to seek help. Seek help from providers that actually understand this reality. The reality that obesity is caused by a biology that is consistent and an environment that has radically changed. Seek help, because you cannot use cocaine moderately. And if you're cocaine addicted, you don't have to use cocaine. But guess what? You do have to eat. And 82% of those processed foods have added sugar for your addiction. You're going to have to go through rehab, and you're going to have to go through withdrawal. This is a serious, true withdrawal for 4 days of every month. 4 days of every month, you're going to go through withdrawal. No corn, no wheat, no rice, no potatoes, and no sugar. All 5 of those foods are addictive because they convert quickly to sugar. So you drop them off and you eat protein and vegetables, and protein and food, protein and vegetables, protein and fruit. No corn, no wheat, no rice, no potatoes, and no sugar. This is not a good time in your life. So don't plan it just before you get on your wedding day or something. This headache, grouchy, hungry. But after 4 days, you're through the worst. And you can continue to eat the healthy foods that you're not addicted to for the rest of that month, pretty much. But you have to eat food. 82% of those foods, you can't even get a chip without sugar in it. 82% of those foods have added sugar. You will get re-addicted. So just plan it. A lot of our dear people have to do this. Now, you also might consider pharmacology. So I've told you that this biology is very consistent. That biology, particularly within the brain, can be altered with some medications. And pharmaceutical schools, research around the world is trying to figure out how can we help people accommodate for this reality of an unchanged biology. And these medications can be useful to you. Now, thirdly, bariatric surgery is another option. Pretty radical, but it's very useful. And the safety of the bariatric surgery has become, it's actually safer now to have bariatric surgery than it is to have your gallbladder out. So this particular area of surgery has researched this very, very carefully. And get this, the brain chemistry changes, and the addiction piece is gone. I can see with such pleasure my patients that have had bariatric surgery or with medication, and they come in and they go, Dr. Peters, for the first time in my life, I don't feel like I'm controlled by food. You know, you'd think they'd say, oh, I feel good, I've lost weight, and so on. No, it's about the brain. I don't feel addicted to food. And surgery is certainly an option. So we have this clash between an environment that's radically changed and a biology that hasn't changed. We can make a difference. Over and over and over, humans have overcome things. This is a big one. This is a huge one because we like food. Our biology attracts us to food, but it's killing us. But we can do it. And we can just get out of the rut that we're currently in with knowledge and courage.